Welcome to This Explainer. We're diving right in today because, well, if you're tuning in, you probably know that feeling all too well. That deep, gnawing frustration of just grinding away, putting in the hours, and seeing absolutely nothing. Just crickets, total silence. Look, today we're going to completely dismantle this myth of the slow start. We'll unpack the exact psychological tools and content tactics from our source material that you actually need to not just survive it, but use it to your advantage. So let's get into it. I know exactly what's running through your head right now. You're looking at your stats, the zero reach, the flatline engagement, the non-existent sales, and you've got this massive, overwhelming urge to just throw in the towel, right? Or maybe pivot to the next shiny thing. You're thinking, literally, nobody is paying attention, so clearly my idea is just broken. But hold on a second. You are confusing a lack of instant gratification with a lack of ultimate potential. Your plan isn't fundamentally broken. You're just trapped in this illusion of the slow start, mistakenly thinking that silence means you're failing. Because here's the reality. A slow start is not some final verdict on your future. Actually, it's just a tunnel. Think about driving straight into a massive mountain. The light vanishes, it gets super dark, and it feels pretty restrictive. But you don't instantly panic and assume the sun blew up, do you? Of course not. You can't see the light, not because it's gone forever, but because you're literally deep inside the mountain. The only reason you don't have the results yet is simply that you haven't given yourself enough time to become the person capable of holding that success. If you just keep driving through the tunnel, that light is an absolute inevitability. To put this into perspective, let's break down the hidden math of success. Imagine taking a single penny and doubling it every single day for 30 days. Well, something kind of terrifying happens if you're impatient. By day 15, halfway through the month, you've only got about $163. Honestly, to everyone on the outside, you look a bit crazy. You're working every single day and have practically nothing to show for it. But check this out. It isn't until day 28 that you finally cross the $1 million mark. And then, day 29, boom, over $5.3 million. This proves that success is functionally invisible for 90% of the journey. The folks who quit in the middle of the month, they walk away with absolutely nothing, totally blind to the massive explosion of growth that was literally just days away. And because of this invisible compounding, we have to talk about a really fatal error. The single biggest mistake you can possibly make right now is making your consistency conditional on your immediate results. If your mindset is, okay, I'll keep posting, I'll keep building, I'll keep showing up, but only if the numbers go up, you are actively sabotaging yourself. You're putting the cart way before the horse. Results are conditional on your consistency, not the other way around. If you tie your hard work to instant validation, you are absolutely going to quit right before your penny hits day 28. To really grasp why this delay happens, think about how a garden works. Before any plant can grow up toward the sun, the shoot system, the fruit, the stuff everyone actually applauds, it has to grow down first. That root system has to push through deep, dark, dense dirt. Roots don't want to be seen. They exist to build stability and handle resistance. That slow start you're stuck in, that is just your root system developing in the dark. It's doing all the grueling, dirty work so that when your visible success finally bursts into the sunlight, your whole empire doesn't just immediately collapse under its own weight. So we need to completely flip our perspective here. That agonizing silence you're experiencing, it is not a punishment. It is your mandatory curriculum. Honestly, it's a gift. Because when your audience is tiny, the pressure is basically zero. This is your training room. This is the exact phase where you are required to sharpen your blade, to test out weird ideas, to fail without ruining your reputation, and to actively learn the raw mechanics of commanding human attention. Don't waste the slow start complaining about how dull your blade is. Use the silence to sharpen it aggressively. Now, to master that craft in the dark, you have to understand the concrete psychology of audience retention. Whether you're speaking on a stage, writing a newsletter, or shooting short-form content, capturing attention is a ruthless, systematic game. It's a three-part process. You have to stop the viewer's autopilot scroll by providing context, you have to open intense curiosity loops, and you have to use specific storytelling techniques to literally lock their attention in place. This is the invisible foundation you've got to build while nobody is watching. Let's dive right into step 1, stopping the scroll. Viewers are on total autopilot out there. They've got muscle memory for swiping past anything that doesn't instantly shock their brain into pausing. Think about the difference between these two statements. If you just say, I don't eat carbs, well, that lacks context. It's boring. It means nothing. But if you add visual context that challenges a widely held core belief, like saying, lean at 45 and I eat carbs every day, bam, you just created a massive curiosity gap. You broke their autopilot because you showed them a reality that completely contradicts what they thought they knew.
Now they've got this open loop in their head, and they literally have to stick around to find out how that's even possible. All right, so you've stopped their scroll. Now you have to hold them there. And that brings us to the story lock. Now, don't worry, you don't need some overly complex, fancy writing formula to be captivating. You just need specific psychological triggers, like very particular word choices and framing techniques that make it practically impossible for your audience to look away. These are basically the verbal anchors that keep your viewer hooked and invested second by second. One of the absolute best story locks is what's called term branding. This is where, instead of just explaining an idea, you actually give it a specific, memorable name. Why? Because it triggers the psychological labeling effect. The second something gets an official-sounding name, our brains automatically assign it massive perceived value. It builds instant hype. So if you say, I use the value equation, instead of just saying, here's how to improve your offer, your viewer suddenly feels like they're getting in on a proprietary secret. They are essentially forced to stick around to uncover what this newly branded term actually means. That naturally leads us to an incredibly sneaky yet super powerful lock: embedded truths. Look at the subtle difference between if you try this and when you try this. Using the word if is a really weak frame. It creates this tiny micro moment of doubt, a little exit door where the viewer wonders, wait, does this even apply to me? But the second you swap that one single word to when, wow, you remove that mental doubt completely. You're framing your advice as an absolute, undeniable reality. Their brain stops evaluating and just naturally submits to your authority. Next up is thought narration. And I'll let you in on a secret. I actually used this exact meta tactic on you earlier in this explainer. Thought narration is basically when you hit pause on your content just to state out loud exactly what you know your viewer is secretly thinking right then and there. When you say something like, now you're probably thinking to yourself, how could this possibly work for my specific situation? It does something magical. It builds immediate, rock-solid trust because it feels like you're literally reading their mind. It takes a standard one-way broadcast and transforms it into a deeply simulated personal conversation. We also have to tap into the psychology of loss aversion by using negative frames. You see, human brains are hardwired by millions of years of evolution to prioritize avoiding threats way over seeking out opportunities. In fact, we are literally twice as motivated to avoid pain as we are to gain some kind of reward. That is exactly why a hook like how to build a brand is just super weak, whereas the worst thing you can do for your brand is an absolute magnet for human attention. It triggers our urgent survival instincts. The viewer isn't just opting in to learn something new, they are desperately trying to protect themselves from making a massive catastrophic mistake.
But here's the catch. Human attention decays incredibly fast. You got to think of your viewer's attention span as an hourglass that runs out every 30 to 60 seconds. If you just stand there reading off a boring list of facts, the sand empties and they're gone. That's why you must use loop openers. These are transitional phrases specifically engineered to reset that mental clock. When you casually drop a line like, but that's not even the most interesting part, or here's what nobody talks about, you are physically flipping that hourglass over. You validate the value they just received, and you tease that the really good stuff is still on the way.
And really, the engine driving all of these curiosity techniques? Contrast words. Words like but, actually, instead, and yet are absolute storytelling superpowers. Curiosity fundamentally lives in the gap between what someone expects to be true and what is actually true. Contrast words create that gap in a split second. When you set up a statement and then hit them with a massive pivot using a contrast word, you rip the viewer out of their comfortable little assumptions and forcefully redirect their brain to pay attention to your alternative reality. When you combine this intense, high-level tactical execution with relentless patience, your entire worldview shifts. Suddenly, a slow start is no longer a stop sign. It's merely a speed bump. And think about it. Why do speed bumps even exist? To protect things that are highly valuable. The universe drops a speed bump in front of you in the form of a slow start, just to make sure you actually have the maturity, the hard skills, and the deep roots required to handle the massive success that is waiting for you on the other side. You really have to embed this truth deep into your operating system. Do not measure your progress strictly by what you can visibly see. I mean, if you judge a seed by digging it out of the dirt every single day just to check if it grew, you're going to completely kill the harvest. Remember that root system working silently in the dark. Remember that penny, quietly compounding invisibly behind the scenes. It's your invisible preparation today that guarantees your highly visible, undeniable success tomorrow. So, to sum up this absolute gauntlet of a curriculum, you've got to master the consistency compound. You must be willing to grow your roots in the dark. You have to use the silence to actively, aggressively sharpen your blade. You need to master those hard, psychological mechanics of capturing human attention. And above all else, seriously, never ever make your consistency conditional on immediate, visible results. Because listen to me, the math is guaranteed. The penny will double. That light at the end of the tunnel is going to show up. The roots will eventually push that shoot right up into the sun. The only real variable that is actually up for debate here is your endurance. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to carry with you as you get back to the grind today. When that invisible compounding finally hits day 28 and your success violently explodes into public view, are you still going to be standing there to claim it? Or will you have quit halfway through the month? Stay disciplined, keep growing, and keep showing up. You got this.